The federal government alone spent over $10 trillion on business products and services, right? And they were obligated. It's a mandated law that they're obligated to spend upwards of 26% of everything that they're spending with small businesses. So that's $2.6 trillion on the table that they have to spend instead of getting paid, maybe a couple thousand, maybe a couple $1,000. Well, I can land a 2 to 5 year contract of $250,000 or $500,000 or 1.7 million per se with the government. The government will pay you like 10 to 20 times more than what one single client will pay you. The great thing about doing business with the government is you don't personally have to provide the service. You can build your team. So now you get an opportunity to have enough cash flow to actually develop and build a team and partner with other small businesses and outsource a lot of the work.
If you want to build a legitimate, profitable online business without shiny objects, without the hypey gimmicks, and without the stress and overwhelm, if you want to make more money without having to be present online all day, every day, pumping out content that nobody sees and hustling DMs to generate leads and sales, then this is the place for you. Welcome to the Digital Trailblazer Podcast, your online business university, where you'll learn how ordinary people start from ground zero with no influence, no email list or audience to sell to, and no business or marketing experience, and go from working 9 to 5 jobs to building successful 6 and 7 figure online businesses and all the steps in between. Learn the strategies that worked and what didn't. Learn the mistakes that they made and how to avoid them, and then learn their plans for scaling their businesses and taking things to the next level. All so that you can build your business faster and easier and make more money without sacrificing the things that are important to you in your life. I'm your host, Leah Ray Getz, and with me is my husband, Todd. Now let's get to it with today's guest. Welcome, Digital Trailblazers. With us today is Dr. Karwanna D. Irving. Karwanna is doing crazy cool stuff. She went from scratching out a full-time, trying to get clients, $30,000 a year to like 10xing that within a single month, leveraging government contracts. I get this question all the time. I have no idea how to do this. I know this is a massive opportunity for coaches to expand their business. So I'm so excited for this conversation today. Welcome, Karwanna. We're so excited to have you. Go ahead and just say hi and let our folks know what you're all about.
Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Karwanna D. Irving, and I am a government contract strategist. I help high-level entrepreneurs actually grow and scale in the government contracting space. I love doing it, especially since there's so many opportunities on the table for small businesses. And by the way, a small business, according to the SBA standards, is any company that has less than 500 employees and generally makes less than 20 million a year for 5 years straight. So there's a lot of small businesses that can benefit from government contracts. And, I can't wait to dive into the information.
Yes. So lay out kind of your before situation and then what this has turned into for you, so people kind of get the full scoop here.
Right. Yeah. So I first discovered government contracts when I was barely making $30,000 a year as a video producer and photographer and web graphic designer. Right. And so traditionally, like most small business owners make the mistake of believing the number one myth that it's going to take 2 to 5 years to grow your business. And I was that person that believed it. And because I believed it, I went along that path. So for the first 5 years in business, 7 years really, I struggled to close customers because typically those customers, when you're just getting started, are like business to consumer clientele. Mm-hmm. And you would have to actually close a lot of people in order to make real revenues, that you need to be financially free, which is why I started my business in the first place. So I started freelancing for a multi-billionaire. He was actually the first client that I had acquired who was a multi-billionaire. And I simply asked him the question that most people are fearful of asking a very successful person is, how did you do it? And so he told me it was government contracts that helped him. And he basically ensured me that if I did government contracts, it will be, basically having 1 million customers in one. And so I did that. It took me a while to figure it out. But once I did, I was able to grow my business to multiple 6 figures in a single month. But the first contract that I landed was $70,000 for 28 days of work. And I thought that was very powerful.
Wow. That's wild. I think a lot of people are getting awestruck by that story, but then Some of them are going, wait, you were doing like videography and stuff? Like, how
Yes.
did you get a government contract for
Contract.
$70,000? Like,
Like, how does it all work? Yeah,
yeah.
so initially, like, I never thought that the government could even be a potential client. When I went to business school and like to all of these places where they kind of help you with your business plan, they help you to carve out a person with a family size and a certain income and a certain region, college degree, whatever, as your ideal client. Nobody really ever talks about the government as a potential client. So it wasn't until I met this one guy who became my mentor that showed me that the government actually purchases all the same stuff that everybody's already selling. So they purchase everything from food to home-based business services to products to video, like you name it. So if you can sell it to a person, the government is also buying it, because you got to think about the government. When you think about government, it's not just these people behind closed doors. These are actually employees in buildings that's consuming food and paper and products and services and telecommunication services, and they're consuming all of these services. And by law, the government is actually obligated to outsource those services and things that they consume to small businesses. So a certain percentage of all their spend has to go to small businesses.
Wow. Okay. So for all of those in the coaching space, right? Because
Mhm.
that's a very large percentage of our
Absolutely.
audience. Can you just give some examples? Because I think people are maybe struggling to
Yeah.
see this for them, right?
Well, I was just saying, like, for people who are coaching, right?
Mhm.
You're coaching someone on a very specific skill set or something, a service or something like that. So, say, like in real estate. So, you're coaching people about success that you've had in real estate and you want to teach them how to have success in real estate, right? But in real estate, you're closing either you're wholesaling or you're closing one home at a time, right? Well, the government has multiple billion-dollar contracts for real estate as well. They're buying buildings, selling buildings. They need someone to manage the buildings and lease out buildings. And so it's the same thing, but it's just with a client who can write a bigger check. So the same thing
Wow.
for, like, for me, for instance, I'm going to use myself as an example. I started coaching other and mentoring other photographers and videographers on how to, edit. And that's a skill set, how to edit and do video production and how to do graphic design and like mix the audio. Well, that's a skill set that I can also sell to the government because they also purchase video editing services, graphic design services, audio mixing, and podcast services as well. And so instead of getting paid, maybe a couple thousand, maybe a couple $1,000s, well, I can land a 2 to 5 year contract of $250,000 or $500,000 or 1.7 million per se with the government.
So with that government contract, are you coaching them on how to do it, or are you actually doing it for them?
So it's a service-based business. So yeah,
Okay.
you're actually providing the service to the government. And the great thing about doing business with the government is you don't personally have to provide the service. You can build your team. So now you get an opportunity to have enough cash flow to actually develop and build a team and partner with other small businesses and outsource a lot of the work as well. So you have not only an increase in influx in revenues, but also now you're able to expand your business in that manner as well.
Okay. So if, for example, if you were selling an online course, or if you were doing coaching,
Mhm.
teaching people how to take pictures and how to do
Yeah.
photography, that's not necessarily something you would sell to the government.
So you wouldn't teach the government how to do it themselves. The government has to utilize your services or a
Okay.
partner of your services. So you have to just kind of basically look at it as can you teach the government things? Yes. They
Mhm.
do acquire and training services like professional development, how to use PowerPoint, how to do Zooms, and so they purchase how to's, right, as well for
Mhm.
trainings, but they also purchase the skill set for the industry. So
Gotcha.
in addition to teaching them how to use PowerPoint, you can actually put together PowerPoints for them. So you have the best of both worlds when it comes to the government, if that makes sense to you.
So if you are a fitness coach, that's something that you can market as a service to the government.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. And the same thing with, like, if you're a nutrition coach. What about like life coaching and different types of mindset coaching? How would those translate?
Yeah, so you have to ask yourself, well, in life coaching, that's a really great question.
Mm.
What are you helping people to accomplish in their life? And if it has to do with have a better life around finances, then that's financial consulting. And there are contracts for financial consulting. If you're helping people to have a better mental health, right, then there are mental health contracts, with the government. So it just depends on what you're helping people to accomplish as a coach.
Okay. What if you are a marketing agency and you specialize in running online ads, maybe Facebook ads or Google ads or YouTube ads?
Mhm.
Is that a service that you can market to the government?
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's a really great question as well. So I'm actually a subcontractor on I think it's like a $5 million marketing contract.
Mm,
So do they have you run ads? Maybe not, but writing copy and creating a marketing plan,
mm.
strategies for marketing government information. Absolutely, you can land contracts for marketing services with the government as well. There's a lot of marketing and communication services.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to come up with like all the different types of niches and things that people come up with because it may be exactly what you do right now may not translate, exactly over to what the government needs, but you could probably modify it in some way where it would
Mhm.
fit something, a need that the government has, or you have the knowledge and the skill set where you could easily
Yeah.
build a team and then
Yeah.
outsource that where it's not too much work on you.
So I think I call that thinking outside the box, right?
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
for instance, I had a client who sold T-shirts, and she had a brand, her own brand of a T-shirt, and instead of thinking like I'm gonna sell this brand to the government, you got to ask yourself, does the government buy T-shirts? Absolutely, they buy
Mm,
it in hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time. They also buy not only the T-shirts, but you're in the apparel industry. They'll buy the shoes, the socks, the accessories, and all those different things. So most small business owners, like, because we're small, like, they think small, right? You have to expand and think about the skill set and the industry that you're in and position that. So it's all about strategic positioning, but there are opportunities for everyone who wants to have an open mind to reposition what they're doing and how they're doing it so that they're able to also participate in this government spend. So just to show you just the magnitude of how important it is for small businesses to not only become aware, but get involved in
mhm.
contracting with the government. In 2020 alone, the US federal government, just, there's local, state, and federal, the federal government alone spent over $10 trillion on business products and services, right? And they were obligated, it's a mandated law that they're obligated to spend upwards of 26% of everything that they're spending with small businesses. So that's $2.6 trillion on the table that they have to spend. So if you could figure out a way to position yourself to be qualified to be one of those people that they spend the money with, you can significantly increase your revenues, like in a year instead of 5 years, right? You can 10x that in a very short period of time and be a part of the top 6 or 2 percentile of money
Yeah.
earners in the
Wow.
US.
So cool. I would love just a story, if you will, of one of your clients who took
Yeah.
something that they wouldn't have thought, right? Didn't
Mhm.
quite fit, and then it turned into something beautiful for them.
Sure, I have a couple stories actually. So I had a client named Gloria who was she was a travel agent, and like during this time, this was like during COVID. She came to me and was like, "Well, I want to sell traveling services to the government." Well, we all know that during COVID, nobody's traveling. All flights are canceled. It's not a whole lot of movement, but do you have an open mind? And this is where you get to leverage the expertise and knowledge of other people. So Gloria, what she did was she saw a contracting opportunity that was set aside for a woman-owned business. And because she had that certification as a woman-owned business, she was able to secure $250,000 doing breast exams. Now, what she did was she found a company that provide breast healthcare exams and partnered with them. So that way she landed her $250,000. She partnered, they split the money. And just like that, she was a multiple six-figure
Wow.
earner where before she wasn't even making any money in her business.
And she didn't even have to do anything on
Didn't have
as
to
far
do
as
anything.
delivery.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's it. Fine. So when it comes to contracting with the government, it's just like there's problems that they're putting out opportunities for
Mhm.
people to solve. And if you can find a way to solve the problem, then now you can land a contract, with the government. Yes.
Okay. So how do we know what contracts are out there?
Yeah, great question. There are different sources that shows you the opportunities that are there. One of them for the federal government alone is sam.gov. So if you go to sam.gov, and you search for contracting opportunities, you'll see over 2 to 300,000 solicitations daily that is being posted for people. And they're looking for people to give them quotes and solve problems. And a percentage of those are set aside for small businesses, for women, for veterans, and so there's a lot of opportunities just on the federal level alone. On the state websites, so every state has its own procurement portal. So you can Google your state for bids or state procurement, and then those websites will come up. With the city and county, the same thing. They have their own procurement portals where they post their bids. And so there's opportunities everywhere. You just have to be resourceful to access them.
Right. So if you're just starting out, is there a best place to start? Like, would you normally start local and then maybe kind of work your way up, or does it not matter? Or would you start, like, would you just go for the big ones with the federal government, or
Yeah.
where would you suggest people start?
Great question. So it just depends on the person. Just like, do you want to limit yourself, or do you want to be in position to get the money if it's in your backyard, if it's regional, or if it's in the state? So it depends on the person, but there is no start here. This is the best place to start. It's just like, are you a small business? And if you can say yes to that, do you have any socioeconomic disadvantages? And if you can say yes to that, even better. So now we can participate in the set asides for those socioeconomic disadvantaged companies. So I would recommend getting registered for all three, because all three are purchasing the services. Is it easier to do one versus the other? No. But I will say, on the federal level, that's where you don't have to have the expertise. All you have to do is find the expert, and then you can close the contract.
Wow. Okay. So you mentioned some things here about your status as a business and being like a woman-owned business or a disadvantage. What does that mean, and what's the process of doing that?
So every agency, like on sam.gov, if you go to sam.gov, you can actually get registered as a certified small business to do federal contracts with the government. Not only does that enable you to participate in the multi-trillion-dollar spend that they set aside for small businesses, but also it allows you to participate even if you're not a small business with federal contracts. On the state level, there's a registration for if you're a small business or a woman business or a minority-owned business. There's also disadvantaged businesses, which those are the companies that has under 500 employees and generally make less than 20 million a year for 5 years straight. So those are all disadvantaged businesses. There's a certification for that. If you're LGBT, there's a certification for that. If you are a veteran and have a business, there's a certification for veteran-owned businesses. And then most city and counties also have a local business certification program where they have set asides for the local businesses to thrive as well. And so the applications, you will find it with the level of government. On the state level with the state, on the federal level with the federal government, local city and county, you will find the application with your city and county.
Okay. So that's where you're going to register to be able to apply for anything, but that's also where you'd apply for the specific designations.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And that disadvantage thing was a vast majority of our audience, I believe. That's for solopreneurs, very few are crushing it outside of that zone.
Yeah, I've done some market research, and I saw out of the 33 million businesses that exist in the US, 96% make less than $100,000, which that's a problem, 96%. And so that's a huge gap of solopreneurs and small businesses that are basically, they created jobs for themselves. They may be making 80 to 90,000, but they're working really hard in the B2C business model. So when you add this, it helps you to get out of that rut, but it'll also help you to become a part of the top 6% of money order earners, or even 2%. This is a real equal opportunity for first-time business owners to, grow and scale to multi-million-dollar firms in a short period of time.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I'm curious, because I'm sure some people who are listening in or watching today, they're like, the wheels are starting to turn. If people go down this route, have you seen them be able to just add this as a branch to their business while they're still maintaining their other B2C sort of activities as a coach?
Absolutely. This is definitely what I encourage. Like, I don't try to encourage anyone to stop what they're doing and do something different. You just add this. And what this does is helps you multiply what you're doing, but you'll also be able to see that it's going to give you a lot more of your time back, because you're not spending time to make money, rather you're making enough money to buy your time freedom back, because these contracts are definitely not tied to an hourly rate. It's tied to your value. Now,
Mhm.
what value are you bringing to the marketplace? The greater the value, the greater the amount of the contract you can secure.
So you mentioned that every state and every locality has their own, own contracts.
Mhm.
I assume that you're not limited to just your own state and your own locality. Like, we're here
Right.
in Florida right now. We could look in Georgia, we could look in Wisconsin, we could look in New York,
Mhm.
California, we could look in all these different places for contracts, even
Yeah.
though we're out of state.
Absolutely. So on the federal level, when you become federally certified as a small business, well, the federal government covers all 51 states. I think we're still 51 states in the US, right? Unless they've added some additionals. But yeah, so it doesn't matter where you are on the federal level, you can do business anywhere in the United States. Now, when it comes to local and state, it depends on if you want to participate only in a set asides. So if you only want to participate in state certified contracts that are only set aside for businesses that are registered in that state, then in order for you to do other state set asides, you have to have a foreign entity registered in
Mhm.
those particular states. So there's a lot of different, strategies and ways to maneuver around those things, but ideally, that's basically how it goes.
Okay. So it sounds to make it make sense. Start, you know, federal and stuff and maybe your state before and get that kind of figured out before
Mhm.
branching out and kind of dealing with the more complicated situations with other
Right.
states.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool.
As far as applying for these contracts,
Mhm.
you have to submit a quote, or do they have kind of a price range that they're looking for? Like, how does that work? Because I'm sure, like a lot of people, if they have to submit a quote,
Yeah.
like I'd be wondering to myself, like,
Like, where do you start? There's a lot. I mean, so yes and yes, there's a range of different things. So there are multiple types of contracting vehicles, right? That the government rolls out opportunities in. Some of them only want a quote, right? And they'll give you the scope of work and give them a quote based off the length of the contract, how much work you think you have to put in to complete that scope of work. But then there are some that are more robust. They want a full proposal. They'll give you the problem, and then they want you to come up with the methodology to solving it, as well as how much is it going to cost, in how much your how many people you need to have on your team, and all those things. So you have to come up with a full proposal. And there are some opportunities where they say this is the maximum we'll spend on to solve this problem. Can you give us a quote within this minimum and maximum, right? And then they'll kind of give you some guidelines there, but there's no one type of contract that is out there. There's multiple different types.
okay. So I assume that's kind of an art form in itself, is kind of hitting that sweet spot where you're not, spending too much of your time, or you're not undervaluing yourself, but you also want to get the contract, right?
Yeah. And they're like, typically when you're just getting started, when it comes to the government, you will undervalue yourself because you're used to B2C, right?
Mhm.
Pricing for B2C. The government will pay you like 10 to 20 times more than what one single client will pay you. So you have to think about it from that perspective, but also there are strategies like past performance requests. So there are laws that govern how you can request, well, who did it before? You can request a copy of the previously won incumbent contract, so you can see, was it similar terms? Was it similar scope? Was it, what was the pricing on that versus the scope for this? And so I can come up with a sweet spot of what I'm going to quote. So there's some research that you can do so that you're not like way underbidding yourself, on
Gotcha.
projects.
Right. Now, does the government always go with the lowest cost option, or is there, are there ways where you can still get the contract if you're not the lowest cost?
Yeah, there's other ways that you can get the contract by being having the best technical proposal that shows you have the best methodology, or you have more to offer for the same price as someone else. So
Mm.
there's all of these things that goes into the evaluation of who they award it to. Sometimes it's just we'll go with the lowest cost, but they'll let you know, hey, we're gonna go with the lowest cost. They'll let you know that up front. But for the most part, there's a variety of different criteria by which they kind of evaluate opportunities. But the great thing is, like, in the proposal opportunities, they give you the what that criteria is going to be, so you have a best chance at being highly competitive.
Gotcha. How competitive are these contracts typically? Are there a lot of people bidding for them, or are there ones where maybe you're the only one that bids?
They have tons. Nobody bids on, like,
Mm.
because people don't, they just don't look. There's not enough people that's doing this.
Oh.
And so they have some that are not competitive at all, and that gets awarded to the first person that bids on it, and then they have some that are highly competitive. So it just all depends. They do have like one vehicle that the government has is called simplified acquisition. This is one of the vehicles by which they roll out contracts. This is the most strategic way of minimizing competition because all they need is 3 quotes. It could be you and 2 other firms. So you have a 1 in 3 chance on a simplified acquisition versus just a regular bid that is above $250,000. So simplified acquisitions are any contracts that's above 10,000 and under 250,000. So those are the ones that all they need is 3 quotes.
Interesting. So I'm wondering for coaches and folks who are, it's maybe a side business or maybe they're full time, but when they start thinking about working with the government, are there some more official things or like insurances or different things that they should have in place to really protect themselves now that they're working with the government specifically?
Yeah, good question. So, I love helping entrepreneurs really get pre-qualified for government contracts, and I typically do that in a 5-day training that I offer that shows them exactly what they typically need, and usually it's the same stuff that they need to qualify for loans and grants and funding. So you will be surprised. It is just basically the basic legal documents that includes LLCs, like your formation document, your EIN, a copy of that, copy of your driver's license, your last 2 years of taxes, whether it's personal or business, the most recent resume, even if it's just business experience on your resume. So it's just basic documents. If you have an LLC, your operating agreement, those are the things that you need to have anyway. But I know that a lot of small business owners do not know that they even need to have those things. But you also have to have a business bank account and a copy of the bank verification document that shows who's authorized to sign on these accounts. And so there's a whole list of basic business documents that you have to have.
Any other important points that you'd like to make or anything like that?
I just wanted to share that contracting with the government, although it's like a little known, concept, I think that this is the key to helping more small business owners become the employers of tomorrow, but also to grow into, mid-size and even larger businesses. And so like, it's just my belief that every small business entrepreneur should at least, consider it, take a look at it, see if it's something that is for them. Because if you're already delivering the service, you may want to consider also delivering that service in bulk to the government. That's basically what it is. It's bulk buying, just buying your services in hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars worth of bulk. And it also gives you longevity with your business. So it's a fail proof, right, business model, because during economic downshifts and recessions and things like COVID and all these other things that come that technically really has a major effect on small businesses. Well, the government prints more money to solve those problems. So it's like you can be growing during those times rather than suffering, And so this is just what I'm really passionate about sharing it because I know what it's done for me. I know what it's done for my family, and I know what it's done for my clients like Gloria, who became a 7-figure earner. So I have a client, her name is Kim, and she was a diversity, equity, inclusion trainer. This is what she did part-time with corporations, and full-time she was a nurse, a traveling nurse. And what she did was started teaching diversity, equity, and inclusion to the government and start landing hundreds of thousands. And even her largest contract in her first year of doing this was $2.5 million. And so it's stories like that. I'm like, so life-changing. So anybody that's like, can this be for me? Like, I would say, if you don't know if this is for you, I can show you again. And I have the 5-day challenge where I show people what's on the table, how to really position yourself from being a graphic designer to selling those services to the government, from being a consultant or coach to selling those services, because it's the skill set. It's not what you do or what you don't do. It's the skill set, and just understanding that there are opportunities out there, and I can teach you those skill set in a very short period of time. And so you'll have a bigger picture, not only of who you are, but how much money is on the table for your particular industry.
Yeah, and I was just that same thought was going through my head when you were saying it
Yeah.
about economic downturn. All this inflation that we've been having, and people's salaries not keeping up, and just the cost of things going up, and like all of our clients are feeling that crunch, but the government isn't. And
Yeah.
it's like
Mhm.
it's so much, and the thing is, they have an incentive to spend that money. Like if they don't spend the money, they lose it, so they're gonna spend it, right?
And you got to think about like, and I'm glad that you mentioned that because you got to think about some of the most renowned business leaders, like Elon Musk. He has
Yep.
a government contract. Jeff Bezos have a government contract. Uber and Lyft, government contract.
Yep.
Nikon cameras, government contract. So all of these companies, they've been
Yeah.
doing it. You know, they've
Yep.
been doing it, and this is how they're able to continue to grow and scale and thrive during these times because they have government contracts. So this right here, when you're leveraging the Small Business Act of America, it levels the playing field for even the smallest, home-based business to also have a government contract. And so it's for everybody if you want it to be for you. Yes.
This is just so cool. I love this conversation. I would love if you could take like your biggest contract that you've personally
Mhm.
done and
Mhm.
kind of explain what the work was, because I think that would help people in processing this.
So when I first got started in the contracting space, I had never even heard of government contracts before, right? So the first contract that I landed, that was the $70,000. That's not the largest, but I'm gonna build from there. So that was the first one, and it was
Mhm.
to actually take pictures on a construction site. Now I knew nothing about construction. I did not know how to read a blueprint, and I had to, do all those things. I didn't know anything about rebar, but I got paid to learn it. And they
Mhm.
have people who will walk you through this is what you do on your contract. So you're getting paid to learn how to do it, right? And so the largest contract that I landed was actually a $1 million contract. And it was over a 5 year period. So that's like $250,000 a year, basically over a 5 year period. And it was with the Department of Transportation. And really on there, all I'm doing is doing video trainings. And so it was a contract for business consulting. I didn't get the business consulting contract, but I got the subcontract to serve a business consulting firm to record all of their trainings and to take
Mhm.
photos of their trainings and their interactions with the businesses that they were serving. And so fun stuff, right? And
Yeah.
so it's something that it like again, I say it's the skill set. It's something that you can do, right? And you can do it whether or not you 100% know what you're doing or not. You just have to have the will, right? And just take
Mhm.
action and learn along the way. And so yeah, that was the one of the largest contracts that I was able to land.
Okay. Now, a question that I have, like, I feel like if you're going in and you've got a contract that's 10 times bigger than what you've ever done before,
Mhm.
what happens if you're biting off more than you can chew? Like, are there situations where you get in there and you figure out that maybe you're more ambitious than what you should have been? What happens?
So 10 times more than what you've ever gotten paid before doesn't mean 10 times more the work. It can actually be less. And so if a scenario came where you got this large contract and you're out of capacity because you're trying to do it all yourself, well, this is where it's so important to start building out teams
Mhm.
and think beyond just yourself, right? Who can you partner with? There are other businesses that are already doing what you do. Instead of thinking of them as a competitor, think about them as a potential partner because
Mm.
together now you have increased capacity to be able to fulfill on a contract instead of putting yourself in a position to lose potentially, this $1 million or more contract, right? So you
Right.
partner and you share the wealth. Sharing the wealth actually helps you to build more capacity to go after even more contracting opportunities.
I love this. This is like we're so like stunned because it's just like mind blown.
Most people are like their minds are blown when they hear about this and the opportunities that are there. But I don't know if you're familiar with the movie War Dogs. You never seen War Dogs? Okay, so homework. Go watch
Okay.
the movie War Dog because in that movie it's about Jonas. So Jonas is an actor, but it's about two. It's a real story about two real people, teenagers. They were like 19, 20 or something like that. Two young men who learned about the Small Business Act of America and how the government has to spend a certain amount of their percentage of contracting with
Mhm.
small businesses, and they secured a $300 million contract. And this movie breaks down exactly what happened, their whole story, right? And then they found out that they bid it like hundreds of millions of dollars lower than everybody else. So they left so much money on the table, but still that kind of money, they went ludicrous, So it's a real story. It really does happen. Another story, during COVID, there's a young man named Wesley Ross. So you can Google this. Wesley Ross was a 16-year-old kid that learned about this as well and started selling hand sanitizer and facial masks during COVID when the government was buying it and made millions of dollars doing that. He was 16 years old. So there are different things and opportunities and products and services that are out there. It's just you have to have an open mind. But also you got to be an action taker in order for this to work for you, right? It's not just going to fall in your lap. You have to look at the opportunities. You have to respond to the opportunities, and you just got to be willing to get out there and do the work.
Wow, I love this. So if people want to learn more about you and how to do all of this stuff and get your help with it, where should they head?
So govconchallenge.com is the best place to start. Again, that's govconchallenge.com, because there you will learn so much about your value, get pre-qualified as a government contractor. In the process, you would know exactly where to go for certifications and how much money the government is particularly spending on your services. And during that period, I show you how to extract the value. So we can take, if you're making 100,000, we'll show you how to turn that with value into millions of dollars with government contracts. And so GovCon Challenge is where you would go. And I love helping people. We've helped over 5,000 businesses just this year alone get pre-qualified for government contracts.
You know what? And the other thing that I just thought of that I'm thinking is just blowing my mind right now is that I think about all the work that we have to do to market our businesses to either other consumers or to other businesses. If we're doing B2B, we got to put together the email marketing system, the email follow-up series, a funnel, the VSLs, the videos and all that. When you're getting government contracts, you don't need any of that, do you?
You don't need absolutely anything. So it's like, I call it the busy work, right? The work that does not lead to cash. Let's just be frank. If you're in business to make money, period. Otherwise, you have no impact. You're just doing a hobby. I don't know, right? So if you have a business, that's what it's supposed to do. And so at the end of the day, if you're building a website does not get you to the client. It doesn't get you to the revenues. If you're going to networking events, everybody's there to network and share cards, and everybody's selling you stuff to everybody, right? But when it comes to the government, they're coming to you saying, this is what I need. So it flips that marketing. You don't even have to have a marketing budget. Like, they're saying, this is what I need. Can you give me a quote? This is what I need. Can you solve the problem? And so all of those different things that people are doing to just stay busy, to make no money or little money, right? In this particular space, you can just solve the problem and start making money. And if it's important for you to build a website, now you're using the government's money to build that website. There are government networking events, but at those events, there are decision makers. They're not trying to get you to buy something. They're there to buy your stuff. And so those are the right rooms to be in. They're there to do business with you as small businesses and women-owned businesses and, disadvantaged businesses in general. So it's just a right and wrong way. Typically we've been doing business wrong for a long time. You'll know if you've been doing business wrong if you're a part of that 96 percentile that's not making six figures. But if you are making six figures and you're kind of stuck at your desk and you feel like you're bogged down, your time is stretched out, and you don't have time to spend with your family, then guess what? I guarantee you, when you land one government contract, you're not going to want to chase another customer, because this is going to help you make more money to have your time freedom back in the process as well. So,
wow, I love this. Well, thank you so much, Karwanna. This has been such an interesting conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Great. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. For show notes and information about today's guest, head to digitaltrailblazer.com. Now, if you love this episode, if you got some value, make sure you leave us a review and subscribe. And be sure to share this episode with anyone you know who could use help to build their business. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.